Today we're talking about number 21, The Threat, and what a threatening read it is. This is a very good book. I really enjoyed this one. It does have its flaws, it does have its major flaws, which we will get into. But overall, I think this is a positive book, and what you see here is the trilogy. So we started with The Discovery, which was alright, pretty average for an Animorphs book. This one, I think, is above average. Next up, we're going to have The Solution, which obviously I'm yet to read. So let's talk about The Threat, shall we? We start off from where we left off in book 20. Being a trilogy, we're not just going to reset from the start of every book. We're straight into the action. Because what happened at the end of The Discovery, they went up into the blade ship that had sucked up a helicopter, which supposedly had the president in it. They took him, the Visithree acquired this person with the gashed shoe, and then the animals crept back up his leg, and they took him back to the helicopter, so they jump out, and then the floor opens beneath them, and they're falling from the sky. And this is all because there are 6 world leaders coming to this Marriott hotel, and the Yeerks are planning something big, according to Eric the Chi. That's why the animals are there. Also, there's a chap called David. You know, little point that I thought I might mention on the side, just there. David is the new boy, and he doesn't know them very well. And quite frankly, they've treated him like a douche, or a bunch of douches. A douchai, is that the plural for douches? Douchai? Don't know. But he has already shown that he's a bit shaky. And I mentioned last time that perhaps Jake shouldn't have taken him on this mission. Now, we're going to get into more of that stuff as we go on, but let's start going through the plot and be nitpicky like I always am. It's my job. So they're falling from the sky as cockroaches, but thankfully for them, Rachel and Tobias didn't get into the blade ship on time, so they've been sort of hanging around. They see the cockroaches and pull them out of the air, which is good, and they take them down to the beach. There are no Yeerks following them, thankfully. And then they continue to talk about, what we're going to do now. They want to get to the Marriott Hotel to investigate it. Understandable, because this is one of the biggest missions they have faced so far. Easily. And so they decide, right, demorph on the beach. Tobias has to go get David clothes, because he's so used to morphing that he can't morph clothes yet. Another reason Jake probably should have kept him behind for training before sending him out on the missions. Tobias comes back, gives him clothes, and they discuss what to do next. Turns out they're going to morph Seagull, which is inconspicuous in this area by the sea. And they're going to investigate the Marriott Hotel from the air. Awesome. I like the idea. There are a few bits in the midst of all that we'll just cover briefly. Firstly, page 17. They're just talking about what's going on. So they're seagulls now, they're flying over. At least we were nearing the brown wall. Seagull eyes aren't as penetrating as bird of prey eyes, but they were still very good. I spotted a dark-suited man in the shadow of the row of tall trees. He wore dark sunglasses. He was talking into a handheld radio, etc., etc. Gee, could that guy look any more like Secret Service? Rachel said with a laugh. And there's another one just 3 meters away, along the wall. They're approaching the Marriott Hotel at this point. Of course they're Secret Service, David said, but so are some of the people lying out here on the beach. With something like this, probably half the people on the beach are security. Marco says, and of course you're the big expert because your dad is a spy, he said with a definite sneer. He's with the National Security Agency. That's right, David said. Yeah, well now he's with the Yeerk Security Agency, Marco muttered. Shut up, Marco, I snapped, narrator being Jake. That was over the line. And yeah, I mean, I can't believe how douchey Marco is being here. That's a perfectly fine point from David. Not only is he fine and he said it like any normal person would say it, but it's useful information. And because his family are in, or at least his dad is in, the special service, he's got, you'd say, okay, yeah, that's a fair point, and you probably know what you're talking about. So Marco takes a dig at him. What the fuck, Marco? I mean, honestly, I never used the C word. My mother hates the C word. She'd kick me out of the house if I used it. So I very, very rarely used it. Use it at all, really. And I've only used it once in this series. And that was the last book with regards to Marco being a CUNT, a see you next Tuesday. And he does it again here. And it's just out of nowhere. There's no need for it. And Jake is very much in the right to say, Marco, shut up, that was over the line. Not surprising. And we'll get into why David turns to the dark side later on. But these little bits here, they're not in there by accident. I believe they deliberately wrote Marco to despise this kid and just to dig at him at every opportunity. It's not just happenstance or necessarily bad writing. I think it's done deliberately. They're horrible to this kid who's just had his life ruined. And Marco's the worst of the lot. And then we get possibly one of the most awesome scenes in Animorphs. They're flying over the Marriott Hotel. Lots of security everywhere. Jake's looking at all this and saying, right, I cannot see any point of access here. At least not in our current morphs and without a plan. We need to take care. And then suddenly there's a guy on the roof with sunglasses and he starts firing Dracons, invisible Dracons with his sunglasses and zapping the seagulls to scare them off. And you think, fuck me, I want those sunglasses. Hold on. I want to get Animorphs. These aren't the best sunglasses, by the way. They're certainly not Secret Service. But I want to get Animorph sunglasses, like Nerf gun style, with a little button that just shoots like bolts. That's awesome. And I hope in any further media we get the Dracon firing sunglasses. It's much better than the torch crap we got on the TV show, let's be honest. They decide to sod off and go back home. It's around this stage, I believe, that we find out that Jake and Rachel's cousin Sadler, that's a strange name, must be an American one. Sadler he's been in a road accident, something like that, got hit off his bike, and he's in hospital. At this stage, it's not really addressed any further. It's a moot point. But of course, this is a trilogy, so I'm not going to say, you didn't do anything with that book, because it's going to come in that book. So, cool. We're setting up the Sadler storyline, which will come later, so that's all we need to cover for now. Cassie phones Jake, gives it the whole code thing. Turns out David has run away from Cassie's barn, where he's currently staying. He can't really stay anywhere else. So Jake and the others are going out to find David. And he morphs Homer, his dog, at the barn. And he sniffs a piece of clothing that David left, sniff, 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 woof, 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 and starts to follow the trail. He's able to follow the trail of the morphs, so he morphs to lion at some point, probably to go through the woods at a quicker pace, get to where he needed to go. And Jake is able to follow this morph. They get to near I think it's like a hotel, Travelodge or something like that. That's what we have in the UK anyway. A little not quite B&B, a motel, let's call it that. And he's gone in there, he's broken a window and gone in as a bald ego, and he's getting free room. He's got a free room. I want to point out something here. So Jake is able to track David as a dog. He's able to track the different morphs. He's able to say, okay, that's the smell of a lion, it's going that way. He's morphed here, follow him over that way. And it pointed out a really serious problem here for me regarding the series. Visser 3 can morph, can't he? So why doesn't Visser 3 just do this? It would be over. Visser 3, morph a dog, after the Yerk pool has had the Andalite bandits in there. Morph dog, right, that's the smell of the creature that was just here. Trail the scent. Get to a certain point and the scent changes and you think, that's a human scent or something along those lines. Even if you can't tell it's a human, you say, right, gone that way. Follow them home. The resistance is over. The Visser 3 could just do that. It's not like he's going to struggle to acquire a fucking poodle somewhere, is he? And I just thought, how much of a fool is this Visser 3 character? This guy who's like some form of general or commander. And I've just come up with the answer to win the invasion for him, to find the Andalite bandits. And he never thought of this. He never thought of this. He's got the fucking morphing power. He can morph anything with a superior scent of scent and just track where these Andalite bandits go, follow them down, find out where they're hiding. Jake can do it to find David. Mind blown. But of course that requires me to apply logic to the character of Visser 3. which is not something that should be done ever. Okay, so David is at this motel, and Jake comes in and says, right, we can't be having this shit. You know, you cannot be taking this room for free and breaking windows and doing all that sort of stuff. We had this example earlier where they got the clothes for David on the beach, but they reimbursed them later on. They managed to get money to this little shack or hut, beachside shop. And David basically says, look, I've got nothing anymore. I've got nothing. I've got no room. I'm being forced to sleep in some shitty old barn filled with animals. And my parents are gone and I've got nothing. You all get to go home. Tobias is a bird so we can sit in a tree all fine and dandy. Axe lives in the woods. And I've got nothing. So we know, it's like the whole question of, if you ever watch Aladdin, and I'm bringing this off the top of my head, by the way, so if this analogy completely fails, you know why. But Aladdin, in the first movie, he steals things. He goes around stealing bread, stealing all this, and we don't feel bad. We don't see him as being bad. Why? Because he's in a desperate situation. He has nothing. He has to steal in order to live a relatively comfortable life. We see him as the good guy. He's doing what he has to survive, and he's just stealing loads of bread here or there. It's not like anybody really cares. So, from that sort of sense, you look at David and you think, yeah, it's a crime and that, but to be fair, you have just been completely fucked. But Jake is in his rightful place to lay down the law, as it were. And he does so. Listen, David, we don't break laws, not unless absolutely necessary. We don't hurt innocent people. We have to control how we behave. I like how he says we don't hurt innocent people, whereas in the last book, Axe chopped off David Dad's finger. I mean, it isn't the worst thing in the world, but you're hurting an innocent person. I think he should have added the not unless absolutely necessary line after he said we don't hurt innocent people. But it's just one of those little things. They have hurt innocent people before, so make of that what you will. So David comes back. He's been in his little travel lodge, comes back to the group, and they discuss a plan. And the plan they come up with is Tobias will fly Jake there. He's a dragonfly, and on his back are the others in little flea morphs. I mean, for a plan, it's not the worst he's ever come up with. It gets them in. It does the job it was intended to do. They sneak in under the hat of some... Hold on. So you've got these bellboys walking around. Like this. Afternoon, ma'am. And so they sneak in under... This is proper, by the way. I got this in London. I'm a posh git. So bellboy's walking around with a dragonfly in his cap. And I don't know why that Jake thinks he has to hover. So he's in here. And he almost bumps into the felt at the back of the hat as this bellboy is walking around. And I just think to myself, why do you have to hover? Why don't you just sit on the inside of the hat? I don't know. I think that was an unnecessary task to hover whilst in the hat. Anyway, bellboy comes up to the room, and out comes the dragonfly. I'm going to put this down now. They fly around for a bit and they go into the vent system. So Jake with the 5 little fleas hanging on his back, and they fly through, and he looks through a vent eventually, and he sees this big ballroom. What happens then? He gets stuck in a spider's web that turns out to be in a less used part of the vent system. And they're running desperately out of time because it's taken them a long time, not only just to get there and get into the building, but also to prepare themselves to get the fleas onto the back of this dragonfly. So they're running out of time desperately. So once they've escaped the spider's web, they immediately jump into the nearest vent, which is this ballroom. And they're demorphing in this large, clearly not defended hall in the Marriott Hotel, where 6 world leaders are coming tomorrow. There's not a single other person in this hall. But anyway, they're struggling to demorph. And they all manage it apart from Marco, who's just... all he's managed to do is grow into a very large flea, which is not a nightmarish thought in itself. And then something bizarre happens. And I think it's very interesting. Cassie basically comes over, puts her hand on this flea and starts motivating him. And then suddenly he's able to morph out. He's able to fully demorph, whereas he couldn't really beforehand. And you think, oh, is this some sort of power that Cassie's got that we don't explore, really? And it's interesting, but it could be something to add as a little theory at the end of this mass series review. This strange power that Cassie seems to have, because she saves Marco from being this horrific overgrown flea. And they're all in this hall. And then they realise that they're behind a hologram. Each corner of this big ballroom has about a 3-metre wide pillar. But only only 3 of them are proper pillars. One of them has been blown out from the ceiling because the Yerks just blew a fucking hole in this Marriott hotel without anybody noticing, and powered this hologram through the centre. And in the middle of this little area is a small, I'd say portable Yerk pool. And suddenly the animals start to realise what's going on. I still do think it's a bit fishy that there was not a single person. There's a Yerk pool. Granted, it's hidden behind a hologram. But there is a Yerk pool in this ballroom where the world leaders are going to be in quite shortly. And there's no security. So Cassie's doing a whole, rise from the fleet, like the pastor in a church, praise. And then nobody hears them. Nobody hears this, nor is there any sound, camera, microphone, security thing picking them up. But again, it's Animorphs. Sometimes you just got to go with the flow. They figure out that it's a hologram, and that there's a little door, like a little archway at the back of this pillar by the wall, that you can go in and out. You can go out of the whole thing, but you can only come in through that little archway. And they've realised that what's going to happen is that these world leaders are going to come round the side of the pillar and get pulled in, and then a hologram is going to show them walking onto a podium and giving a speech. Right. Okay. I mean, we talked, I think somebody mentions in this that Chi hologram technology is so much more advanced than Yerk hologram technology. But what have we had so far? We've had a whole helicopter simulated flying, and now we know that they can make holograms of presidents and prime ministers giving whole speeches. Wow. How have the Yerks not won this invasion already, if they have the power to do that shit? Honestly, Visa 3, you're an incompetent twazzock. It does put into question then what sort of stuff the Chi could do with their hologram technology if it is so much more advanced than this. Christ. I can't actually even imagine what Chi could do with their hologram technology if this is what the Yerks can do. I tried to think of some exaggerated example, but I can't even really fathom. I cannot fathom. Then what happens is Jake is in the ball. He's exploring this pillar and how it works, and then suddenly people come in to the ballroom and he dives under a table. He's under there, and these people, these officials, come and sit down at this table. Turns out that it wasn't the president with the gashed shoe all along. It was some guy called Tony, who was the chief of security or staff, or I don't think it's that relevant at this point. But he's the one with the gashed shoe. And we can assume by the way he's talking and what he's saying that this is Visa 3 in morph. Okay? So Visa 3 has morphed this Tony guy and is saying, right, I want it to go like this. I want them to walk around that pillar, which implies that he knows where the Yerk pool is, and they're going to pull them in, and you know the plan at this point. The stupid plan. So, my question now, knowing this, where's the real Tony? Where has the real Tony gone? Where did we last see the real Tony? He was being dragged back towards the helicopter that was being put back on its flight course towards the Marriott Hotel. We know that he was being put back onto that helicopter because the animals went up his leg and then he was dragged and they jumped out just beside the helicopter. They were putting the real Tony back on the helicopter. So that real Tony would now have gotten to the resort. Where's the real Tony? I imagine what happened here because later on, spoiler alert, the President of the United States is in the ballroom, whereas Cassie saw him while they were flying over outside by the beach in his shorts and sandals, essentially. So what maybe happens is Tony gets there in his helicopter and goes off, I don't know, gambling. And Vista 3 goes into the Marriott Hotel as Tony and Morph. Possibly. I mean, I suppose in a way, I suppose that does explain it. It's just that I have to explain the story for the story, so it is what it is. To be completely honest, I don't see why the Yeerks didn't just take the other helicopter with the actual president inside and just either infest him or have the Vita acquire him. Would probably be a lot more useful, do you not think? I'm going to talk about this in a little bit. The Vista 3's plan in this is so needlessly convoluted and dependent on pure chance and blissful ignorance that it's hard to actually get into without just sending myself into a spiral of pure confusion. It's bizarre, but yeah, apparently instead of just taking the president and doing it to all the other heads of state and presidents and prime ministers as they're arriving, no, he's going to do this whole convoluted plan to do something. Fuck you, Vista 3. So they finish in there, Tony disappears, and Jake goes back into the pillar and they decide, right, so we know what's going on here, let's sod off because there's not much else we can do right now. And Axe hesitated. He turned his stalk eyes meaningfully towards the stainless steel tub, the little miniature Yeerk pool. The Yeerks are probably already in place. Do we leave them? I knew what he was suggesting. It would be easy to finish them off right there and then, but if we did, the Yeerks might simply be able to replace them, and they'd be warned that we knew their plan. Besides, there was something wrong about killing defenseless slugs. I was pretty sure of that. I shook my head. Let's fly. So this is completely different to how Jake acts in Book 6, The Capture, where he has an opportunity to boil a Yeerk pool. He was presented with that same opportunity here. What did he do in Book 6? He boiled the Yeerk pool, and there was always the chance in the Yeerk pool that they would just replace the Yeerks in that pool as well. So it's relatively similar circumstances. The only difference would be that if they learnt, well, there wasn't even really a plan for future in the Capture one. It was just, right, we're here now, let's just do this, we're done here. Oh, for fuck's sake, why do I keep leaving you on? Whereas in this one, they know, right, we're going to end up coming back. So we don't want to boil these Yeerks because that will show that we've been here and we know this place. So that's a good reason why the different reaction is there, why he did it in the Capture, but he didn't do it in this book. But he adds that little bit saying something about it is definitely wrong, which is not something he considered back in Book 6. So we've seen a definite change here in Jake, and I don't think it's just lack of consistency. I don't think it's a case of inconsistent or bad writing. I think it's done deliberately, because we've learnt a lot since Book 6. Look at the last book, for example, The Departure. We've seen a more nuanced side of the Yeerks, and I think that's developing in Jake's head now. Through the course of, 14 books, that has seeped in to his mind. The nuances of what they're doing, it's starting to come there. So when he's presented with the situation, one of his first thoughts is, yeah, something just isn't right about just killing them in this water. Even though he's done it before, and he'll no doubt do it again, he doesn't do it. He's had a change of heart. And I like it. It's a nice touch. It's nice to see these characters evolving. Whether it's the right decision, that's different. And I know that if, for example, Marco was in charge, he would be like, button, go. Or Axe, it would be button, go. Fast boil. Or maybe even Rachel. But Jake he's much more sentimental, which probably isn't the right word, but that's the word I'm going with, so fucking deal with it. So anyway, they're going to fly out of this place, but they realise that there's going to be security on the roof, so they want a distraction. David suggests the fire alarm. And Jake says, right, yeah, you do that. And then the rest of us will fly. So David does it. He goes and rings the fire alarm, but then he trips. And Jake's like, right, shit, I'm going to have to go grab him here. So he runs out just as these controllers burst in. And both of them hide under this table. David starts to morph lion. Stays under the table, but he's morphing lion. And Jake is like... But David continues. The controllers bring down the hologram to see that nothing's happened to the Yerk pool, which is a good thing that Jake said don't boil the Yerks, because then the game would be up, essentially. And Jake is worried that David isn't going to have control or is going to give them away, but David doesn't. He stays there and doesn't really do anything. And once these controllers leave, he says, I was just being prepared, which, again, is... When your leader says no, you don't do it. So when Jake is saying, no, don't morph, you should stop. You should listen to his orders. But obviously David is not military personnel. He hasn't been trained in that sort of way. So, yeah, he's going to do what he thinks is right at the time, which is a flaw, a serious flaw, especially if you're going to be part of a team. And then he asks Jake, oh, who do you think would win in a fight between a lion and a tiger? And Jake dwells on that for a little bit. But then they leave. They get out, and all the animals are now out, and they're going to formulate their full plan. They've scoped out the area. They're going to do their plan. Now, this is one of the first times that we ever see Jake actually planning for missions. And it's no surprise, because it's such a vital and tricky mission. And he's scoped the area. He's gone in for the initial site, and now he's come back and he's saying, right, this is what we know. This is our plan. And I'm thinking, nice one, Jake. You're starting to get it. Really, really happy with that. So we move on with the plan. A rather annoying line at the end of this chapter, page 98. They're talking about the problems of this mission. Just a few major problems. We would have to take out any controllers who were stationed within the hologram column instantly. And if any of us stepped outside the hologram, there would be security guys on us before we could blink. Then we'd have to be ready to snatch the various world leaders as they were pushed towards us and convince them to play along, despite the fact that most of them didn't speak English. Yeah, okay. That's not a problem, Jake. Assuming that this series is consistent. Let's think about it. Right. Axe understands them. Elfangor understood them. Granted, he did live on Earth for a bit, but he also understood... Go back to the Andalite Chronicles. First time Prince Elfangor ever met humans, it was Lauren and Chapman, and he understood them. It took his translator chip a little while to fully figure it out, but he knew the language. He could tell the language. You have an Andalite. His name is Aximili. He also has this translator chip in his head. Are you trying to tell me, book series, that the translator chip for a completely alien race only works for English? I know it's an American book series, and we know what Americans are like. They don't know the world outside of America, for the most part. It just doesn't exist. It's a world of fiction as far as they're concerned. So it's understandable that the authors thought, well, the translator chip can translate English, but not the other languages. If it could, then Axe would have told them. Assuming he's a team player, which by this point he pretty much is. So I think it's either a plot hole or just a complete overlook of logic. Although both of those are probably the same, one and the same, you know. And then they want to go inside this pillar of a hologram, this thing that the blade ship is up there shooting straight down, right? I will go first, Axe said. If I appear to run into an invisible wall and am knocked unconscious and fall towards the ground, you'll know the force field is too strong at this height. What do we know about this force field? Okay, so the Animorphs were able to penetrate it at what could only be no more than 5 meters. Why are you worried about it being too strong at that height when you established earlier in the book there's actually a line that says, oh, we were able to get through it from the upper height because it wasn't useful up that bit. Have we forgotten that? Is that not a thing now? Or are we just going to erase that and just rewrite the logic again. Minor point. Just one of those little nitpicks that I nitpick. It's what I do, you know. It's what I'm here for. And then they drop the weights on these controllers and they fall down. They're very accurate with the bird morphs, which is understandable. And then just to make sure, Rachel drops Marco in. He's a cobra and he bites one of them on the leg who looks like he might still be on the verge of consciousness. Okay. No. No. What's it that Jake said at this point? Firstly, cobra bites don't knock you unconscious. So that wouldn't have worked. Secondly, Jake says, enough we hope. He delivered a very small dose of toxin. Enough we hoped to keep the guy down but leave him breathing. No, the guy's fucked. Right, cobras. There is enough venom in a single cobra bite to kill 20 people or an elephant. Even just a little tiny little bite is going to kill him probably at least 10 times over. So, yeah, you've just killed the guy. And then later on, another one of them starts stirring and Marco bites him, so you've just killed 2 people. Well done, guys. Well done. You might want to research the cobra before you send one into battle. If your intent is not to outright kill people, because, yeah, they're dead. Yeah, they're dead. Give it a few minutes, and they're gone. And then we get a rather annoying part on page 108. They've got these guys here, and they're going to morph them so that they can get away with being outside of the pillar. They'll take the suits of these security and morph them. Jake narrates, I know what you're thinking. We have a rule against morphing humans, but to my mind, these weren't really other humans. The bodies may have been, but their minds were pure yerk. Besides, there was no other way. Even Cassie had agreed for this one time. For this one time? Cassie agreed for this one time. She's agreed every other fucking time. In fact, she suggested it every other fucking time, as far as I'm concerned. Why is it that Cassie's just got this handle on history? She's like something out of 1984, you know, whoever controls the past controls the present. She just she mind waves at people to convince them that she said something different or did something different in the past. They've got this delusional view of who this Cassie character is, because no, she's always suggested, the one time she suggested morphing human, fuck that. No, she suggests it every fucking time. At least 90% of the time it's happened, it's been Cassie stepping up saying,
we must morph each other. Principles be damned.
And not only that, but this sudden new rule of, oh wait, they've got yerks in their head, therefore they're not human and we can use them. No! Once again, that's a new rule that you've just invented. Ugh. It's like in the last book. Was it the last book where Cassie said, oh, it's okay if Axe morphs human because it's a different race. Why are we inventing new rules in all these new books now? Right, the rule is you don't morph sentient races or what you deem to be sentient races. That's the rule. It's been that way for, 18 books? And in the last 2 books, we've had 2 new rules. You're not allowed to morph sentient races unless they've got a yerk in their head, or you can morph a sentient race so long as you're not a member of that race. Where are these new rules coming from? Where, Jake? So they're in this hall and they're thinking about the plan, right? One of the, I think it's the French Prime Minister, French President, comes around and he doesn't go into the pillar. So the animals assume, right, that one must be the controller one, because Eric said one of them, at least, was a controller. And then he finishes his speech. Time has passed. It's about a 10-minute or so speech. And they were in longer than that. So you probably estimate they've been there about 20 odd minutes at least. And then the Russian Prime Minister comes up, diddly-diddly, and he doesn't get pulled in either. And then suddenly it twigs in their mind. This is un trap. It is a trap. And for show, it is. Because suddenly, about 20 minutes after them being there, Vista 3 suddenly steps out of the hologram of this Russian Prime Minister. Is it Russian President or Prime? I think it's President, actually. steps out and says, "Aha, I know you're behind that pillar. Come out and I will let you live." Right, okay, so Visser knows that they're within that pillar. If he knows now, he must have known earlier, 20 minutes ago. What have they done differently? They haven't done anything different. Visser was just waiting there, watching the pillar like, right, so they're in there now. We'll give them another 10 minutes just to settle in, you know. It would be unfair to jump so early. And my thinking here is, at one point it's mentioned that a weight, one of the weights they land on the controllers, fell out of the hologram. I'm thinking that's what clued in the Yeerks. So this weight bounced out, and that was the clue that the Yeerks needed to say, right, the Andalite bandits are in there now. And they waited for the French guy to do his speech and for the Russian to come up and do his speech. Why did they wait so long? They were just stood there like, right, we know they're in there. Can't we just wait a bit? You know? They're in no rush, obviously. You've got to consider as well that given them this long is just going to give them the opportunity to escape and realise it's a trap. So the Visser might have just waited all that time and given them time to go, lift up the hologram and, oh, they fucked off. Which is it? Because if it isn't that, and he's only just realised they're there, even though they haven't done anything, how did he know they'd gone in there? Can he see inside this hologram? If he can, then he knows they're human. So it can't be that. Oh dear. And then it becomes holoception. Hologram inception. Holoception. Because not only are they in the middle of a hologram, but that hologram is inside another hologram, which is the banqueting hall. The big ballroom with all the guests, and they turn that off, and there's loads of Hork-Bajir around the edge of this hall. So, and then that turns out to be a hologram. So it's a hologram inside a hologram inside a hologram. Are you really telling me, Axe, that this Yeerks hologram technology is so damn inferior? We've got fucking holoception over here. It's crazy. I mean, I'm surprised it didn't turn out that Visser 3 was a hologram as well. I'm surprised it got to that point. Surprised the entire bloody hotel wasn't a hologram. Anyway, Jake realises this when he notices that the Hork-Bajir are all just staring straight ahead and they're not looking at Marco. And he asks Marco to go towards them. Turns out these Hork-Bajir don't exist, they're not there. So Jake realises. But before that happened, Visser 3 has got the Animorphs there, and they think that they're surrounded by Hork-Bajir, and David is suddenly like, right, I give up, I'm on your side now, and runs up to Visser 3, who just fucking stands there with this line next to him, who he believes is an Andalite. Visser 3, I mean, oh my god. At least say, right, you can be on my side, but go stand over there. You go stand over in that corner, where I know you're safe. No, he just lets this line stand there. Like, fucking wow, Visser 3. Anyway, that happens. The Animorphs believe that David's being a traitor, but once Jake realises that... Oh no, David starts to demorph, but he does it very slowly. He does it really slowly, apparently, which at the time seems strange. But then it seems that the Visser's attention goes away from him back to the other animals, thinking that David is now on his side, and he starts to remorph back to lion. Then Jake sets Marco out to bite the Hork-Bajir, find out they're fake. Turns out the Hork-Bajir aren't there. And that's when David, the Animorphs decide, right, we're going to attack, and David strikes Visser 3. It looks like a pincer movement going on here. And these details become very important, as we will cover. So David attacks Visser 3 as a lion morph right next to him, and somehow doesn't kill him. We've seen this before. It was in book 2, where Jake is attacking Visser 3 in his tiger morph, and doesn't get a single killer one bite around the neck, and he's done. I'm so shocked that twice now a big cat has been all over Visser 3, and not one of them has been able to at least debilitate him to some degree. He just gets up and I have not been foiled again. But, yeah, so David's dealing with Visser 3 poorly, and the others jump out, and I can't believe it. So they've been in there for about 30 minutes or so at this point, surely. And these controllers all know that they're there, all these human controllers. And they're stood around this pillar and thinking, right, there are Andalite bandits behind there. The hologram goes up. And they're looking at these things. And then they attack. And then the controllers start fucking fidgeting around their pockets for their Dracon. It's like, fuck, where did it go? Oh, the fuck, there it is. Right, how do I turn it on? Be fucking ready, lads. Right, they're there. Ready with my weapon, just in case. Right, problem, fire. Rather than fucking, I know it's here somewhere. I didn't leave it at the fucking dry cleaners, did I? Oh, there it is. Oh, hit by a grizzly bear. Oh my fucking god, controllers. What the fuck is this shit? Visser 3 is, I know I say it so much, but this is the definitive time I'm saying it. Visser 3 is the worst fucking leader I've ever read in fiction or in reality. He is the worst, most incompetent, bumbling, fumbling, stumbling, dithering, tottering twat of a leader. That's what he is. Right? Okay, now that we've got that settled, we can move on. Turns out Visser 3 knows that David is one of them. He must suspect at some point it's this lion. In fact, he probably does think it's that it's this lion. He starts to morph once David starts to attack, which of course takes a couple of minutes. The animals seem to have a hang of this fight, because we get a brief scene of them knocking human controllers aside who are just fucking fumbling and bumbling around like idiots. And all that's left between Visser 3 and the Animorphs at this point seems to be these human controllers, who they seem to have mostly taken care of at this point. They're certainly not getting shot that much. Cassie gets grazed by a weapon. But honestly, your chance is right there to kill Visser 3. Do it. He then he demorphs from this thing, whatever he's morphing, and demorphs Tony. Usually he's got loads of Hawk-Bajir around, but he hasn't this time. Just fucking waste the fucker. Yeah, you might lose someone on the way, but surely your warriors at this point, you say, right, we've got a level of risk here, but these are the best odds we've ever had to deal with this sucker. Do it, right? He's right there. David is right there. Waste him. Take the risk. He's the bloody invasion general prick head face. Just fucking kill him. But they don't, they just let him go. They just let him go. Shock him. And I'm surprised now as well. I'm really surprised. I mean, I've said Visser 3's incompetent, but he takes it to the next level every fucking book. So he knows that David is one of them, right? Does not a single part of him suspect that the others might be human as well. He knows that the blue box has been taken around by humans. He knows that David is now, he's one of the morphing group, one of the Andalite bandits. All his bloody sub-Vissers and under-Vissers and lieutenants for you Americans, they're all thinking, right, we're pretty sure these guys are humans. Just nobody mention it to the Visser. We don't want that hassle. Everybody knows. The only person who doesn't fucking know is Visser 3. And he's just been given the biggest fucking clue. Do you honestly think that Visser 3 would be under the assumption that Andalites would give a shit about this kid and let him into their Andalite bandit team? No. No, 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 no. They wouldn't. This is the clearest clue that the Vissers had, that these are not Andalites, and yet he's still fucking. It's shocking, absolutely shocking. But that's enough Visser 3 for today. You've had your fill. Let's carry on. So the Animorphs escape. It turns out that the big event is the next day. Yep, the next day. Lines have been crossed. And we'll discuss that in a little bit. But what happens next? The Animorphs are pissed at David's apparent traitoring, his betrayal of the Animorphs. And what is said here? Page 130. I was impressed, Rachel said, then added privately to me, that the gutless, treacherous little worm, he blows with the wind, he turned on Visser 3 when he saw we might win. Right. This is part of why I think David turned out the way he did, because that's not true. Go back to page 122, back when all this was going on. David was standing beside Visser 3. He was demorphing, but he was demorphing slowly. It would be impossible to tell that he was human so far. In a few seconds, no, David was remorphing. He was getting more lion-like again. Jake, Marcus said, I just bit a Hawk-Bajir on the leg. He tasted like air. I went right through him. It's a hologram, I yelled. I'd think I'd better just... No, I said. I'm faster than you are. I'll get him. But I'm closest, David said suddenly. David was standing just a metre from Visser 3. You want to kill someone, you filthy... whatever. But you get the point. David was still under the assumption that the place was filled with Hawk-Bajir when he started to remorph beside Visser 3, right? And it's almost like it's been put deliberately in that order. It's right there. So he was remorphing, and then the very next sentence, the very next paragraph, they find out it's a hologram and that the Hawk-Bajir aren't really there. It's almost like it's deliberately been put right next to each other. So you see, right. So David must have still been under the impression that the place was filled with Hawk-Bajir. So when we go forward to Rachel saying, oh, he's a gutless, treacherous little worm who turned on Visser 3 when he saw we might win. No, he turned on Visser 3 before he realised that the Hawk-Bajir were there. When the Hawk-Bajir were there, it was still pretty shit odds, and odds that he might die. So, it's really hard to say, because there's a line later on where Jake is confronting David. And it's almost like he says, well, why shouldn't I care for my own life? Almost implying that he betrayed the Animorphs, but the way it's written there, it's really weird, and it's one that we don't know the answers to. Did he turn on the Animorphs at that point? Was it his plan all along? The order in which events happened there suggest that it was his plan all along. It really does. Because as far as he knew, the Hawk-Bajir were all still there. And he was going to attack the Visser. He started remorphing. So, yeah, it's really hard to tell what went on, and the book has not cleared it up. Maybe the solution will. I don't know. This is me operating on the fact that I haven't read that one for a few years, and I've just read these two. So this is the mindset I'm on part 2 of the trilogy, okay? But that's how I see it at the moment. And then we get the Anakin Skywalker bit. This bit where suddenly David turns to the dark side. There have been clues here and there. Nobody in the group likes him. They treat him like shit, and he feels bloody rejected all the time, and he's got nowhere to go, no family, no anything. So we get these little things that would turn to the dark side, but then it happens so suddenly. It was almost like Star Wars, where Anakin Skywalker's turn to the dark side is rather abrupt, understandable, but abrupt. So David runs away from Cassie's barn again and goes back to his home, where Visser 3 said the other day, we'll be waiting there. If you want to be saved from these Andalites, we'll meet you there. Which would imply that he was in fact a traitor. But then when he's there, he says this, do what, Jake? Turn myself over to the Yeerks? Of course not. You really think I'm dumb enough to try that? That is not what this is about. So, yeah, on the one hand, you say, oh, he's turned himself over to the Yeerks. But the way that's said, it's almost like, well, no, he's not doing that. He's just being stupid. He's just being stupid. He has nowhere else to go. He doesn't know what to do. His life has been turned to shit. And he just doesn't have a fucking clue what he's doing. He's gone mad. He's gone mad. He's turning to the dark side out of madness. Crazy. Crazy. But Tobias has followed him. And when Jake enters David's old room where he's got the TV on and he's a bald eagle sitting there, he sees Tobias's lifeless corpse on the bed. Turns out David has indeed gone way too far in attacking Tobias now. That's what I mean by abrupt. It's like we didn't really... We saw no signs of this, really. it's just like, oh, okay, shit, he killed Tobias. Where the fuck did that come from? Oh dear. But yeah, at that point, you have crossed the line and the sympathy just goes away. Once you've done that, it's like, yeah, I understand your problems to this point. I think that I don't think that the paranoia of the Animorphs is that justified. I think they think incredibly harshly of you and they suspect you when perhaps you are telling the truth. But once you go past the line of, I'm going to kill one of you, yeah, you lose my sympathy a bit, David. I'm sorry. Hork-Bajir come into the room, but Jake and David are able to escape. Just in time, the Hork-Bajir come out, but they fall into a pool, which is strangely cartoonish for what we're going for. But okay, fair enough. They are wandering around gardens after all. Might as well go for a swim. And they fly off, and they meet on a roof. And that's where they have the epic cat fight, which goes back to who would win in a fight between a lion and a tiger. They have that fight, and they fall through a glass ceiling, and then Jake feels the bite on his neck, and we cut. And that's where book 3 will come in of this trilogy. So that's the book. Whew. What a doozy, eh? This book felt epic in a number of ways. The scale of the plan, the scoping out of it, the figuring out all these little pieces, the David bit at the end, it does feel epic. It does, and I found it very enjoyable for the most part. But there was some stuff that I found a bit dodgy. David's turn to the dark side, a very abrupt turn, because as I said, there were no clear signs of him turning. There were no clear signs. There were little bits, but all of them had a justifiable reason for them happening. Right, so let's go over them. Attacking the crow. Could have fallen prey to the bird of prey instinct, as I've explained in the previous video. Even Jake in this book says, yeah, that's understandable. In fact, why am I saying all this? Jake says it in the book. He goes over everything that's happened with David and he says, yeah, they are all understandable. They all could have happened genuinely. So we just don't know at this point. There's just so much, and then suddenly he kills Tobias. It's like, fucking, what? It does come a bit out of left field. It really does jump at you, and it's like, fucking, wow, okay. Whether it proves that he did things negatively earlier, no, not really. I think what's happened here with the David thing, he is a monster of the Animorphs' own creation. Just look at the way the book is written. The last 2 books. Anytime David speaks up, somebody bolts, verbally bolts at him and slaps him back down. Almost every time. Look at Marco at the start of this book. Look at him in the last book. Look at Rachel as well. Look at Cassie at a couple of points. They were talking about, he made a joke about, oh, they're racist against birds or something. And Cassie's like, actually, it's not really comparable, because it's like, okay, even Cassie's being a bit of a dick to him. You know, he's trying to make a joke and Cassie gets all serious about it. It's like, this kid must just feel so out of place. And he mentions it. He's like, you guys are such a little clique, you know, and I don't feel welcome here. I've got nothing else to go to. I can't live anywhere. My parents are gone. I can't do shit all. And the Animorphs are largely to blame for this, because they did not do things right. I think part of it comes down to Jake as well. Firstly, he didn't control the others. They were just loose cannons on him. But secondly, they brought him straight into this first mission. And I think that was a big mistake. Jake should have said, right, this is what's going to happen, but we're going to put you through training first so you know what you're doing and you can keep things under control. We're going to make sure that you have a gradual growth into the team rather than just slap bang into a really messy situation. I think Jake does have to take some blame for that. This kid's life has been turned upside down and you're going to throw him right in the deep end. It's no wonder the kid went insane. No wonder. Could it have been avoided? It's really hard to say. Go back to the last book. What choice did they have? So this guy's parents were gone. He was a wanted figure to the Yeerks. They were going to get him. He was a risk to them. What could they have done? What could they have done? They tried their best, and credit has got to go for them for trying to do the right thing. But did they really try? Look at Marco, look at Rachel, look at Cassie. Look at Axe, how they just dismissed this kid. Right, we've got this choice to make, but we're not going to do it the right way. We're going to treat you like shit. And look what happens. So the Animorphs have to take a real big hit from this. They need to learn from this mistake, because this almost cost them dearly. As far as we know, as of reading this book, Tobias is dead. Of course, that's going to change because we know he's back later, obviously. But these are fatal errors that they've made. Really fatal errors. Partly down to Jake. But at the same time, it's not something he's had to deal with before. It's a learning experience for him. And really, was there any positive solution that could have come out of all this? The only positive would have been he comes into the Animorphs. They find him some better place to stay than Cassie's barn, because for a kid that must be humiliating. Remember, he's a teenager. You know what teenagers are like. You take their phone off them for 5 minutes, it's the fucking end of the world. I mean, this poor kid, his life was fucked, and the Animorphs fucked him more. That's it. That's what it is. But we'll talk more about this at the end of the solution, which is obviously the next book in the series. There's one more large thing I want to cover, and that is the Visser's plan. So the plan was weird, and it's such a headache. I've been trying to think about it for the last day, and it's just such a headache. What was the plan, right? So that's your trap, that little pillar in the corner of this big ballroom. And how are you going to know that they're in there? Obviously, maybe they saw the weights, the actual heavy weight that they dropped on the controllers, and they waited a little while and then jumped on them. How would they know that the Animorphs would find this pillar, right? How would they know? Did they know that the Animorphs would go through the vent systems and conveniently go through that one little vent? How would Visser 3 know that they would do that? Did he think that they would see the blade ship hovering and casting a hologram, that they'd somehow detect that blade ship doing that, and they'd say, right, so there's a hologram there, we need to look in there and do that. But then you ask the question of, okay, so he thinks these are Andalites, and his plan is for them to know where the blade ship is, and the blade ship is just hovering consistently for days, just there. And the Andalites are like, right, so it's there, and it's just going to wait there, not moving, completely vulnerable. Pop. Bang. Is that the Visser's plan? Because I don't think so. That doesn't make sense. One of the details we learn is that the actual event is the next day, which I find so baffling, and it just adds a whole new level of what the fuckery to this whole thing. Right, so if the Andalites were to truly find out about this event, wouldn't they find out about the genuine event? How does the Visser think the Andalites are going to find out about this? They'd get told, they'd get info from somewhere. If they're going to get info, they're going to get told the real date, when it's actually happening. There's one thing that convinces the Animorphs that it's on this particular day, the day before. Eric. How strange. Now, I'm not going to get too far down this conspiracy theory because I know it's bollocks, but it's the only thing that actually makes sense in this particular situation. And I put it down to sloppy writing, basically. Right. So the way the Animorphs find out about this particular day is because Eric tells them that it's happening on this particular day. He also tells them that one of these is a controller, but he doesn't know which. Right? That is the only... There are no other clues to the Animorphs that it's happening on this particular day. Is Eric a double crosser? Has the Visser just hired him and say, right, tell the Animorphs that it's happening on that day? It's actually happening on that day, which I'm hoping they don't find out about. It's happening on that day. Go tell them. Also tell them that one of them is a controller, but just don't tell them which. You know, tell them that something's going on here on this day and that the Yerks are all ever present. And Eric goes and tells the Animorphs. And that's false information. Eric's given them false information. Jake has got to have some real serious questions of Eric after this, if you think about it. Eric's landed them in the shit here. What's going on there? I don't know. I don't know. It makes you wonder where Eric's getting his information from, doesn't it? Because let's face it, he is not a traitor. The only logical explanation here is that he is a traitor, but we know that he's not a traitor. So that's just I think that's a writing issue that makes it seem that Eric is a traitor here, because where else is he going to get that false information from? Where's it coming from? How has he not found the real information that it's the next day? It doesn't make sense. It's weird. Yeah, Jake, sort Eric out. There's something clear. He's malfunctioning. Fucking chuck him in the bin. Throw him a fucking bone or something. I don't know. Now, I know that somewhere in my mind there's more stuff about this that I want to say, but Visser's plan was so convoluted and messy. So convoluted and messy that I don't even know where to begin. It's that fucking bloated of a plan with all these different puzzle pieces that don't fit together. It's like, what do I do with this? What do I make of this plan? What is this? Oh dear. What do you reckon? Do you reckon the Eric is a double crosser theory is genuine? Maybe he's playing both sides here, you know? What do you think? It's bollocks, isn't it? But it's the only thing that makes this plot make sense, so make of that what you will. Anyway, that's this one. Right, Jake's leadership. He does some good planning. He does some good leadership. I think he does a lot of things right. But I think he's got to take some of the blame for what happened to David. I do think he did. It's a real mixed bag here. You've got complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Real fatal decisions on one hand that, to be honest, weren't that much under his control, so a bit more lenient on there, but he also planned quite well, went about things the right way. I'm going to give him a 6. I think that's a reasonable score for him this time. So Jake, you'll get a leadership score of a 6 in here. As for the book itself, it's a 9. It's a strong 9. It's close to a 10, but yeah, the Visser's plan in there is just, I almost took 2 points off for it because I was just like, what is this mess? What is going on here? But the book is so epic. It's awesome. So I'm going to give it a strong 9 out of 10. The next book is part 3 of the trilogy, and trilogy means there's 3 books, which means this is the last of the trilogy. And it is The Solution, and it's a Rachel book. Rachel's books have been poor up to this point, but I'm hoping this brings her back, right? So thank you very much for watching. Remember to check out my fan fiction, check out the Animorphs Discord, links are in the description below, and have an Annie-tastic, wonderful time. Thank you very much for watching. I shall see you next time, everybody. Ta-ra.